If your creative push has helped you, you can help out the show by shopping on Amazon.com. All you have to do is head to yourcreativepush.com/Amazon. That will take you right there and you can shop how you normally would. A small percentage of your purchases will go directly to helping cover the costs of creating, hosting, and maintaining your creative push. And you can make a big difference just by buying the things that you're going to anyway. Again, that's yourcreativepush.com/Amazon, and thank you for thinking of the show and for helping out. Your Creative Push, episode 201.
This is not a dress rehearsal. If you're not happy, you need to start to bust a move and move in the right direction.
Welcome to Your Creative Push, the podcast that pushes you to pursue your creative passions. I'm your host, Youngman Brown, and my guest today is Ann Rea. Ann is a San Francisco-based artist and the founder of Artists Who Thrive. Her artistic talent is praised by her mentor, Wayne Thiebaud, an American art icon. She has been featured in Fortune, the Wine Enthusiast, and Art Business News magazines, in the San Francisco Chronicle, in the book Career Renegade by Jonathan Fields, and on HGTV, ABC, and the Good Life Project. She is also a favorite instructor on Creative Live's Money and Life channel, broadcasting to over 1 million students worldwide. Ann is also the creator of the Making Art, Making Money semester, 8 foundational online business and marketing courses. Her students study with fellow artists from around the globe via live video calls within a welcoming and supportive community. And Ann, welcome to the show. I was wondering if you could start out by giving us a brief creative bio, how you became the artist, the creative person, and the, I want to say, artist helper that you've become today.
How did I become the artist helper, the artist mentor? It was really by accident. It wasn't something that I set off to do. When I decided to become a full-time artist and move to San Francisco, both the zany ideas, I decided to do that, and I, unlike a lot of artists, wrote a business plan. And to be perfectly honest, it was kind of a half-baked plan, but I had a very clear goal that I wanted to accomplish within my first year as a full-time artist. And then I accomplished that goal, and as a result of that, I started receiving press. The press is really what brought other artists to me, and they were looking for help on how to sell their art without feeling like a sellout. And so I sort of reluctantly started consulting, and then I thought I can't really do all of this at once. So I started a blog called Artists Who Thrive. And then I was on Creative Live, and then I was on Creative Live again. And it just became perfectly obvious to me that there was a burning need for this information. And so I decided to create the Making Art, Making Money semester. So that's sort of that's the Reader's Digest version of how I came to doing this. But it wasn't something I set out to do. It was just something that happened. And then I really felt the call to respond because some of what I had figured out came to me kind of instinctively. And it was obvious that there are cultural messages about making art and making money. Those messages were distorting the thinking and the confidence of artists unnecessarily. And I really wanted to set the record straight.
What do you think is like one of the main things that the record needs to be set straight on?
Man, well, we don't have days, but just think of some of the vocabulary that people use around artists. They'll say things, and without batting an eye, without considering how demeaning or insulting, they'll use the phrase "starving artists" or "art whore," or we could probably sit here for a good hour and list all of the negative stereotypes that are thrust upon artists. And unfortunately, a lot of artists swallow these stereotypes, and then they spread that amongst themselves. That's really what got me fired up and decided I wanted to, really start reaching out and talking about this. What's ironic about this, if you look at the people who are most sort of disrespected, right, and at the same time revered, admired, are artists. And really, it's the ones that get paid. Right? As soon as you get started, and I have experienced this firsthand, as soon as you start getting paid, and you start getting press, well, everything, then you're great. Before that, you're just flaky and, you're artsy fartsy. That's another one, artsy fartsy. And as soon as you get paid, everyone's opinion of you suddenly changes, and you haven't changed, and your art hasn't really changed.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's one of those things that I think other people that surround you, always have this kind of connotation of what an artist should be, what a creative person can be. It's not a real thing until it becomes a real thing. And it's such a interesting transition that happens when you can actually support yourself doing this creative thing, and all of a sudden that's like all the proof you need. But like you said, it's the same exact thing. You're doing the same exact thing, except you're just past that kind of pinnacle.
Well, actually, you're probably not doing the same exact thing. Like the art itself may be very similar, but in my experience, there's a big difference between, let's say, my painting when I was painting for and creating art for art's sake. Even though the art didn't actually change, there was a big difference when I started to get paid. Big difference. And when I understood how I could create value above and beyond the art itself and the target market I could serve, my whole world changed. It changed so much that I, received press coverage, which kind of was really astonishing. And my confidence level increased dramatically. My sense of self changed for the better. So there is a significant difference. When you're making it for yourself and yourself alone, there's no shame in that, but that is a hobby by definition. As soon as you start creating value for others or perceived value and they pay you, then that's a whole different world. Then it's a much better world, let me tell you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I think that's probably the goal for every kind of artist, every creative person, is to somehow find a way to, and it's not even about the money necessarily. It's just about making it so you have more time to do it, so that you can not have the other worry of like having a full-time job to put food on the table and stuff like that,
Yeah, but I mean, really not to put too fine a point on it, but I'm going to put too fine a point on it. It is about the money. And so, see, it's like we're not allowed to even say it. Well, of course it's about the money. That's what allows you to, that's what, first of all, there's nothing more inspiring than getting paid for your art. There's nothing more inspiring. And there's nothing that feels worse when you are pouring all of your time and your talent and your energy and you're not getting paid jack. The money is what makes the difference.
What advice would you give to people who are in that, that tricky transition period where they are trying to thrive? They're trying to be able to make money from it, but they still love what they're doing, but they just want to get to that point where they're making money. What's like the best advice you would give to them to start on that path to start making sales, to start making money, and to start really thriving?
Well, first and foremost, you have to figure out the exact amount of money. Money is a very exact tool, right? If I gave you a $20 bill versus a $100 bill, you would notice the difference, right? So you're going to really be clear about how much money you want to make and by when. That's number one. And don't miss that point. That's incredibly important. So if you want to make your living part-time as an artist, that's what I did when I started out. How much money would you like to make each year? If you would like to make your living full-time as an artist, how much money do you need to make? And that's not your gross sales, but your net sales. So that's really important, is the absolute clarity around the money that you want to make. So it is about the money in that regard. You've got to figure that out. And so to give an example, my first year as a full-time artist, I was in 2005 and I wanted to make $100,000 in gross sales. So I made $103,246 in sales. So that's the most important thing. Like, how much money do you want to make? And then you have to have a plan, and that plan has to be written down, because by writing, when we write things down, we learn, we show ourselves what we know and what we don't yet know. So it's just important to know. It's important to know what to have both of those things. You can't do that without a written plan. And I always say a plan to sell art without a plan is a plan to sell no art. And then if you just look at some statistics, it's not just, you don't take my opinion for it. There's lots of evidence that when we write down our goals and we write down a plan in order to accomplish and review those goals, and we review them on a regular basis, our chances of actually accomplishing the goals go up exponentially. So there's no reason why you wouldn't do those two very simple things. And then, the next question you have to ask yourself is, okay, I know what I want. I kind of know how I'm going to get it, which will evolve over time, understanding how you're going to get it. And then the next question you have to ask is, who can help me? Like who has the resources? Who has the experience? Who's done this before? That's because they can get you there faster. They can help you avoid the pitfalls. They can help you. They can save you time. They can save you money. They can save you a lot of heartache and mistakes if you can learn from someone who's already been there and done it. But it really does need to be someone who's done something that you want to accomplish. So what do you want precisely? How are you going to get it? And who can help you? That's my advice.
I like it. What, who, and how.
Yeah.
So you mentioned before that your one main goal, and I think it is important for people to have that one just very, very clear goal. And you said you had kind of a half-baked plan. So what would you say were some of like the problems with like your half-baked plan in comparison to like kind of what you just described as like a good plan for people to have?
Well, I actually give away my current outline, but I'd say it was half-baked, but they're all kind of half-baked when you start.
Right.
You don't know yet what you don't know, right? Mm. So you just write down the assumption. I would say, the assumptions you're making, maybe some of the resources, or you can feel free to use the outline that I give away. But the important thing is that you have a plan. You have a plan because then you can just test your assumptions. You can get clarity in your thinking. It's sort of like, I'm sitting here in San Francisco right now. If I wanted to get to New York City and drive in my car, I wouldn't go without a map, right? But I'm also going to have to drive through California, over the Sierras, and then through Nevada. I don't actually remember all the other states I'm going to need to pass through to get to New York City. So you have to sort of have that. Your plan is kind of like a compass more than it is a roadmap, if that makes any sense. You just want to make sure that you're pointing in the right direction. And I know that sounds sort of vague, but everybody's plan is very different depending on where they are today and where they want to go. And that's the other thing that I would be really rigorous about, is being very honest about where you are today. So I have artists who will come to me and say, well, I want to make $100,000 in sales. And I'm like, okay, well, great. Well, how much did you make last year? Well, I made $2,000 total in sales. Now, I'm not saying that they can't accomplish that, but you have to look at, that's a pretty significant percentage of increase in sales. So pick a specific goal that you believe you can actually accomplish, right? And it's just more do it. So for example, if you had $2,000 in sales, maybe it'd be more realistic to see if you could just double that within a year or within 6 months, but not go from 2,000 to 100,000 unless you have a clear plan. And if you do, then God bless you. I hope, go do it. Don't take anyone, if you really believe you can do something, I wouldn't let anyone stop me, but I would be really honest with myself, because I was told that I wasn't going to make it and that I was nuts. And I'm glad I didn't listen. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, I defined my goal and I built my plan based on real assumptions, and not just wild guesses, not numbers I had plucked out of the air and hoped for. They were numbers that I had planned for.
Yeah, and I think that what you're saying about making a realistic goal because making too big of a goal could definitely demoralize you from like setting a shorter goal. But that's where the who comes in, like the who can help you to not only like figure out like where you are at, to give you like kind of an honest opinion of where you're at in your career, or where you're at in your kind of skill set and where you need to improve. And that's where the who can really help out. And I think that's where Artists Who Thrive could really help out in making art, making money.
I think the other thing too is to understand, as an artist, you are never going to have a career. So let me explain. Unless you're a commercial artist, a graphic designer, an illustrator, and you work for a company, then you get a W-2 and you have a job and you have a resume and you can maybe have a career. But if you're an independent artist and you're either represented by art representatives, or you represent yourself, you don't get a W-2. So you don't have a job, so you don't have a career. Now, that's a very significant thing to understand, because if you approach making your art and making sales from your art like you have a career, that's backwards. You have a business. And if you don't believe me, you just need to, the IRS is going to be expecting you, if you live in the United States, to submit your Schedule C, your profit and loss statement, or if you have an S Corp, your corporate filing and your profit and loss statement. So this is important, to have an entrepreneurial mindset and really embrace it.
Absolutely. And I think that that's something that sometimes artists lack, is that entrepreneurial spirit, or at least the bravery to kind of tap into that entrepreneurial spirit. So aside from like tax help, how can making art, making money help artistic and creative people tap into those entrepreneurial skills?
We actually don't get into any tax filing, because it's actually not legal for me to give tax or financial advice or legal advice. But really, I'll just quote a good friend of mine, Dr. Elliot McCulkin. He's also nicknamed Dr. E by Dr. Dre and Russell Simmons, the hip hop mogul.
Nice.
You guys have heard of Dr. Dre because you probably wear his headphones, right? So rappers get it. They understand. They don't have a conflict about making art and making money, which is why I love them. So Dr. E used to teach a course at business school at Pepperdine University. He used to say, every entrepreneur is an artist and every artist is an entrepreneur. And it was actually Dr. Dre and Russell Simmons picked up on that one-liner and nicknamed him Dr. E. They loved it. So this is what you got to get first and foremost. It's going to be really hard to go forward and make money with your art if you don't understand that you have a business in the first place. So you really do need to start there. And if you have any resistance around it, just look back in your art history books. Those artists weren't getting a paycheck. They didn't have a resume.
Absolutely, yeah. It's a tough life, and that's why that's the kind of the point of the podcast is, to hear the different stories about the different artists, and everybody's kind of going through this same thing together, these things that hold you back, not only creating a career, but just the day-to-day stuff. So has there been any day-to-day stuff that has held you back in your kind of artistic career?
Well, I don't consider that I have a career. I consider that I have a business.
Right.
So here's the thing. Instead of focusing on what's holding me back or what's bogging me down, I spend a considered amount of effort remembering my mission. I would rather be pulled towards something than to push myself toward it. And if you have a clear mission, then you don't have to push yourself so much, and you don't have to push your supporters either. They're pulled towards you, and you're pulled towards a greater calling, a calling that's greater than your art or yourself. And that's how I handle that. I think that's really important, to understand what your overall mission is.
Yeah, like we were saying before, that one clear goal, that like clearly defined goal, and then the other plan that might change along the way, just audibling if you have to, but just always having that one clear goal. But
the goal shouldn't be confused with the overall mission. So the mission, a mission in my definition of a mission, is the one problem in the world that you believe is really worth solving. And that's got nothing to do with your art. It's got nothing, it's how you're going to be of service to others. And your goal is just really, your goal is to be profitable. Because if you're not, you can't fulfill your mission.
Now, I've heard you tell this once. First of all, I'm obsessed with synchronicities, like really like crazy things that happen. I heard you tell this one story. Do you know what I'm talking about? With the writer?
Oh, yeah, the one who had writer's block?
Yeah. Would you mind telling that story?
Yeah, no, so I went to art school and then got married. I moved to California. I was supposed to move to San Francisco. Didn't move to San Francisco. Moved to the suburbs. Was, in a pretty unhappy marriage. And so I went to go visit a friend. Mind you, after I got married and after I moved to California, I stopped making art because for many reasons. There's many reasons why so many people who go to art school have bachelors of fine art or masters of fine art or music degrees. It's like 2 years later, very few of them are actually making art anymore. It's kind of a sad statistic, considering what the tuition cost is in particular. Anyway, so I gave up. I really just sort of resigned myself. Like this is just not even feasible. And really need to do is focus on, paying this mortgage and dealing with the realities and the demands of life and paying back these student loans. And so I gave up art and I got pretty depressed and I had anxiety and insomnia. So I went to go visit a friend 2,000 miles away, over 2,000 miles away back in Ohio. And she said to me, I think that you're really depressed and you're really anxious because you're not making art anymore. And it's really who you are. You're fundamentally a creative person and you have no creative outlet whatsoever. So you're just kind of caving in on yourself. And I said, yeah, well, that's just what I have to do. I have to give up. And so she said, okay. Well, in the meantime, she just kind of snuck this watercolor set into the trunk of her car.
Nice.
And we tootled off to go to this town square and maybe visit this museum. And so we wound up going into this town square and there was this gallery. And we went inside and there was this beautiful contemporary landscape, seascape that was very luminous and lovely. And I don't know if it was our conversation or if it was the landscape, but I started to tear up. I was just really moved by it. And I can't say that I have had that experience before or since. And I looked over at my friend and she's tearing up. And then I started laughing because she was crying about a painting. And then she started laughing because I was crying about a painting. And then we started crying again. And we were just ridiculous. And so we went and got a coffee and sat down in the town square. Like, what the hell is that about? And she said, I don't know. I said, well, I don't know either. And I said, but I think maybe you're right. Maybe I should just try to paint a little bit or something. Maybe draw, paint, whatever. Why don't you take that watercolor set that you hid in the back trunk and let's go sit in the gardens around the museum and I'll just do a little field sketch. I think you're right. And I looked, to back up, I missed a piece of the story. So before I took this trip, I was really on a path of self-discovery and I went to a self-development course in San Francisco, California. And I met this man there who said, I've got writer's block. And I talked to him about his so-called writer's block. And I said, wow, I'm really sorry to hear that. And I thought, I guess I kind of have the same thing. So sorry, I left that part of the story out. So back to the park bench with my friend. We're sitting there and I've agreed I'm going to paint. I've agreed that we just had this strange mystical moment in front of this painting. And we're both a little stunned about why we were responding that way. And as soon as I said, I'm going to paint again, I looked up. And 10 feet in front of me was the man, the author, who I had met over 2,000 miles away 1 week earlier, who had writer's block.
I'm fist pumping here. I love that. What did you take that as? Like, what did you take that as a sign or just?
You can't ignore that. I mean, I felt like I was struck by a bolt of lightning. Like the hand of God just came down and gave me a big nudge. So, of course, I walked up to him and reintroduced myself, and he remembered me, and I asked him how he was doing and if he still had writer's block, and he's like, yeah, I still have writer's block. And I walked away from him, and I just knew, like, yeah, you got writer's block because you're not damn well writing, and I've got what the hell I've got because I'm just not making any art. Let's just get to it. And from that moment on, I just started making art again, and I never stopped. It was like this magical intervention. It was bizarre and wonderful and mystical and inspiring and weird all at the same time.
Yeah, like I said, I love those synchronicities. I've had complete episodes about just like magic and like when the universe kind of winks at you, and it's just like, even if it's not real, it's like, it's so nice to have that kind of affirmation where you feel like, okay, I just made this like profound decision to, you know, get back to art or doing whatever it is that you're going to do, and to get that kind of like a, I don't know, message. It can be so affirming, you know?
Yeah, it definitely changed my life. It was like, we all have moments in our life where the trajectory of our entire life can pivot. And that was definitely one of them. Had we not ambled into that gallery and ambled out at the exacting moment, I mean, my path with this author would have never crossed. So my encouragement is like, don't dismiss those moments. That's like the gold of life. Like, you really pay close attention. You may not get another moment like that.
I could not agree more. I totally agree. So would you have any advice for anybody who might currently listening right now, might currently be in like a long gap like you had? They might be suffering from depression, anxiety, insomnia, whatever it might be, because of the fact that they're not creating, like your friend was saying. Do you have any advice for them aside from, you know, a synchronistic event to make them do it, to kind of bring them to that synchronistic event?
Well, without giving health advice, I can just speak from my own experience with depression and anxiety and insomnia. And I suffered from it for a long time. And so I can say I empathize deeply with people who are also suffering from it. What I want to say to them is that depression and anxiety and insomnia trick your brain into thinking that this is a permanent condition. And they trick your brain into thinking that you are just stuck like this. And it's a big fat lie. And unfortunately, let me speak of the United States anyway, but our traditional medical system is completely inept in dealing with these conditions because they're so multifaceted. So I wasn't just depressed because I wasn't creating. There was many layers. There's many layers to it. It's a whole mind, body, spiritual connection. And so I started to get better by making art, but that was not it. I also started exercising regularly, which has huge impact on your brain chemistry. I changed my diet to a much healthier diet. I fired toxic people and friends, and I just stopped having contact with people who were negative. And I just had to make changes, and they didn't happen all overnight. They happened over a course of time. But here's the thing, you're not getting out of here alive. You know, this is not a dress rehearsal. If you're not happy, you need to start to bust a move and move in the right direction. Figure out what it is. And don't put so much pressure on yourself that you think you have to figure it out overnight. You can figure it out over time. And just have hope, because There are plenty of people who've overcome worse, more than likely, much worse than the situation you're in. And not being able to make art and make money with it, that's a first world problem. And selling your art is a privilege. And I would just don't ever forget that. It's a privilege.
During that time that there was a gap in like your kind of creative output, were you actively thinking about the fact that you weren't creating, or was it just kind of like life kind of took over, or was it like an active decision like, okay, I need to like cut art out of my life right now because I don't have time for that?
I just felt I don't have time for it. Like it's just, I felt like I was just trying to keep up with the long commute and keep up with the soul-sucking corporate position and team meetings with my team leader. And I mean, all that happy horse shit. But I mean, I had a hard time stomaching because I'm not skilled at politics. And I was just so unhappy. I'm not very good with authority either. Like, I mean, I just will not follow rules if they don't make sense to me. So I was really I am not a good employee at all. I'm a very bad employee. I'm a hard worker and I get stuff done, but I don't do well in those environments. So it took all my energy and all my focus just to get myself to work from Monday through Friday, and oftentimes Saturdays working overtime. So I didn't have any bandwidth left for making art. Like, what? That's not happening. I can't even get out of bed.
No, I think you're describing what a lot of people are going through. It's that, like we were talking about before, the all those bad messages that society kind of sends you where you can't do this creative thing. So, okay, I'll go down this path of getting a quote real job. And then you're kind of stuck with that. And then that just sucks all the life out of you, all of your energy and all of just like all of your outputs that you don't even have the time to even, like you said, to think about it, because you don't have time to do your creative passion because you just have to get through today and just get that paycheck and just survive.
But after that moment that I described, the magical moment, what I realized was this whole story I was telling myself that I don't have time was just a story. And it was true that I had tremendous amount of time I spent working and commuting in particular. So, I just scheduled time on weekends to paint. And if it's not scheduled, it's not real. I would make myself the promise that I would show up to my easel and I would, put on my painting overalls and I put my palette out. And if I didn't want to paint after I'd done all that, then I wouldn't make myself do that. But usually I did. So, I carved out the time, and by carving out that time, I was eventually able to start selling my art part-time, and that led to selling it full-time. And that led to me sitting here talking to you. So it's just like, take a baby step and that will make you feel better. Or just having a goal that's realistic. And when you're you be honest with yourself about where you are. Like, you can't pretend away your current obstacles. You gotta really face them. And then just have, what is it that you desire? You're not getting out of here alive. As my dear friend Scott Dinsmore, who passed, said, and live your legend, right? He just said, I think who was he talking to? I don't know who he was interviewing. I can't remember now, but it's like waiting to do it after you retire, or waiting to make your art after this or after that. It's like waiting to have sex until after you retire. Like, why would you do that?
Yeah, absolutely. And that day, that waiting just keeps adding up, and you'll never get to it. I think a lot of people can relate to that. But yeah, the way to get to that and to not wait anymore is writing that plan down, like you said before, and like you said, not scheduled. It's not real. So just to write it down and chunk it down.
Get help. I mean, I have to, unfortunately, a lot of artist communities, there's a lot of scarcity and there's a lot of jealousy. That's very toxic. And so find people, artists or not, who are supportive. all you got to do is be supportive back to them. You'll find plenty of people who'll encourage you and cheer you on. That's really important. You can't do this by yourself. It's too hard. It's too lonely. You got to have people around you who are going to be happy when you sell a piece of art, or when you're thinking about selling art. You're going to be happy for you because you're inspired to try some new medium or whatever it is, right?
I completely agree. That's the point of the podcast. And I'm so happy to have you on to help to kind of spread that message and encourage other people. So thank you for that. And the way we like to end the show is with what we call the final push. And that's where I ask you to kind of reach to the microphone and just grab the shoulder of one of the listeners that you've already really inspired today and just give them your best words of advice and really push them to pursue their creative passions.
My advice is I'm not going to push you at all, because you need to figure out what pulls you. What are you drawn to? Who are you? What do you stand for? And what do you stand against? And what are you going to do with the rest of your life? Because you're not getting out of here alive. You don't know when your number's up. So you need to take a good hard look at where you are sitting today and where you would like to be, and start mapping out a plan to get there. Because this is not a dress rehearsal. And if you need help, ask for help. If you need help, go find help. And if people around you are not helpful and they're not kind and encouraging, get them out of your life immediately.
Cut out that toxicity.
No, yeah, get rid of it. You deserve better. You deserve better. Absolutely.
Ann, thank you so much for coming on the show today and for giving us that pull. You can find Ann at makingartmakingmoney.com, and we'll have all the links to everything we talked about, including more ways to find Ann at yourcreativepush.com/Ann Rea. That's ANNREA. Ann, thank you so much again.
You're welcome.
Oh man, what a great conversation. Hey, are you someone who tells yourself a story like Ann did? We've talked about this on the show before, and I've done this too. I know that you're all guilty of it. This narrative that we tell ourselves that we don't have enough time to get to our creative passion, so we throw in the towel. We do have busy lives. We do have a lot of stuff going on. We do have responsibilities, but do you have 5 minutes? Just 5 minutes to get to your creative passion? 5 minutes. Have that be a starting point, even if you do have to schedule it in. I think you'd be surprised the amount of time throughout your day that you can find, and especially if you do pencil it in, you will be able to get to it. Like Ann said, if it's not scheduled, it's not real. And this and a lot of the things she actually talked about really correlate with our last episode, episode 200, the 5 steps to creating the ideas that scare you. And number 3 was what I consider to be the most important. It's the most simple as well. It's writing it down, writing your ideas down so that you can start the process of creating that idea into something real, something tangible, not just something in your head. But this notion of writing things down really transcends just writing your ideas down, because if you write down your overall mission, your big goals, and then your plan on how to get there, then that will become a real thing too, and you'll find out what you do know and what you don't know, like Ann was saying. You'll begin to see what's realistic and what's not. And the really exciting thing is that when you start to write, say, like a yearly monetary goal down and your plan to attain that goal, once you start chunking it down to months and to weeks, you'll see another wonderful concept that we've talked about, just how long a year is. And when you actually map it out and see these smaller short-term goals along the way, and you see that they might actually be attainable, there's nothing more motivating than that. So just like your smaller ideas or your bigger ideas that scare you, figure out what you want out of life. Figure out what you want out of this year. A big goal or a tangible goal for yourself. And instead of just thinking about it and saying, oh, maybe it might be nice if I got there, or maybe it might be nice if I started selling work, or maybe it might be nice if I was able to actually start to support myself with my creative passion. Don't have that be a goal in your head. Have that be a thing on paper. And even if it's a tiny goal this year of making a little bit of money, start that path. When it's in your head, it's just a dream. But to turn that dream into a reality, to start to turn that dream into a reality, you have to bring it into reality. And the easiest way to do that is to write down that plan. So that's my challenge for you this weekend, is to really think about what you would like to get accomplished, not only this year, but for your life. Write that down, and then below that, write how to get there. Figure out that plan and find people, like Ann said, that are further along that path that can help you out. And if you need help finding people to help you, why don't you head to our new Facebook group? That's right. I finally unveiled the Facebook group. If you want to get there, you can head to yourcreativepush.com/group, or you can search for it on Facebook. This is a long overdue thing, and you can really gain a lot from each other. I know a lot of you have reached out to me to talk about your creative journey, so it would be so cool for you guys to be able to share that with each other. And if all of you did it, I know we'd have a pretty big group, so join there and we'll get things rolling. It might be a slow rollout, but hey, be the first people, be the pioneers, be the trailblazers of that Facebook group. I would love to see who joins first, and I can't wait to see you there. On Monday's show, we have Melissa Sue Stanley and Max Bear. They are two talented artists with different skill sets, but they are a couple, and I love their energy, and it's a really fun episode. You can find Melissa at melissasuestanley.net and Max at maxbearart.com, or you can head to yourcreativepush.com/201 to get links to them, as well as everything we talked about today with Ann. But that is all I've got for you today. Hopefully you were inspired to go and get your work done, so go and get it done. Have a wonderful, productive weekend. Figure out your big goals, write them down, and also write down how you can get there. Figure out that plan. I love you all, and we will see you on Monday. Unless you join the Facebook group, and then we'll see you this weekend. Take care, everybody. Bye. Never miss a push. Head to yourcreativepush.com/subscribe to find the easiest way for you to subscribe to the podcast.